Okay.
All right, I guess we can convene then, so.
Are we gonna have it like another meeting? Do you
Finance?
know, for finance?
Oh, trust me, month of February, we'll have lots of meetings because we have to come up with the fiscal 2018 budget.
Okay,
So there will, and quite literally, we will go through every single fund, and we'll go through item by item, and especially because you guys are new,
yeah,
I don't have the ledgers here in front of us, and then, most of the things I know what flow through the various accounts, but, there are so many accounts that sometimes I'm even like, I'm not quite sure what goes through there, so in February, we will probably have 2 or 3.
what's the date of, the budget has to be done by?
February 28th. In theory, we are not authorized to spend money after that date unless there is, so like last year, we didn't pass it until March, and in essence, people were working for free. But we should have it in place by the end of the fiscal year so that, all funds are appropriated and we have the authorization to spend money.
So fiscal year is the same date?
February 28th is always
Okay.
the end of February. Last year was, of course, February 29th because it was leap year.
Okay.
So, so it's, and again, that whole process consists of a public hearing. And again, quite literally, while the council is assembled, we go through every single fund, every single account. There's an explanation of what that account represents, and there's an explanation, especially if there's a significant variance from year to year, why there is, why that variance exists. And at that point, the Finance Committee should have already recommended, or come to a budget that they believe is doable. But again, it does allow council members to also, they get the budgets obviously earlier, but it also gives the council members an opportunity to suggest changes. Same thing, there's a public hearing, so if people want to question, why we're doing something, it's in there. And I think for example, one of the big things last year, and I want to say it was the DDA, but I'm not absolutely certain which fund it was. Peggy suggested that we set aside some money for the possibility of LED lighting, in downtown area because it's more energy efficient.
Yeah.
So, so that's the process. Like I said, it's a public hearing. You've got to publish notice of the public hearing 7 days before. So that's got to be in the paper, probably no later than the February 20th. It's ideal if you can get it in the paper before then. So that's probably something that we should start discussing when to hold the budget hearing, even in the January meeting. So, so the first thing we probably need to do is select a chairperson for this committee. So, Tyler, have you chaired anything yet?
No.
Would you like to chair the Finance Committee?
If you guys would like me to.
Sure.
I think you'd be a good choice. I really do. So in that case, if there's a consensus, Tyler, you will be the chair. And number 2, we should have some form of rules of procedure. I think what we found in most of the committees is, again, we would have petitions from the public initially, and then it would be at the discretion of the chairperson whether they would entertain questions or comments during the course of the meeting. So, is that
What I'm going to do, like with one I chair, I'm going to offer them, like in the beginning of the meeting, I'm going to offer them their opinions or suggestions, and then I'm going to do it at the end of the meeting also.
Yeah,
So when they hear different things, then they can put their input also. But that's how I'm going to handle it. You handle it the way you want.
That sounds fine.
you want to do it that way? Okay, and that's what we will do. So you'll have public comment at the beginning of the meeting and then at the conclusion. Okay. you guys have copies of the audited financial statements. What happens is we have a complete audit every other year. So in this particular year, we will only have a review of our financial statements. And what that consists of then is Jackie essentially, who is our CPA, Jackie Alto is our CPA. You know, she basically goes through, and what she's really doing is tests of reasonableness. You know, are there significant variances in accounts, you know, that she gives an explanation for. So, and it's only if there is something that seems particularly out of the ordinary, she will then do detailed testing. But the review is much less expensive than a full audit, and again, but it is also not as comprehensive. I mean, it does not entail detailed and random testing of transactions. One of the things that you will notice in the management comment letter, and this has been something that we have received consistently year after year, and this is probably the year we need to address it, is our fire department, although it is an arm of the village, operates substantially independent of the village. And so they pay their own bills, you know, they really operate very independent of the village, and they're not supposed to. And so I think we need to have a meeting, and again, when you ask about future finance meetings, I think we need to get Tim Gasparich in here, who is the fire chief, and just simply explain that you know, that they need, right, that they, and so all that would entail is essentially, you know, whoever becomes village administrator would maintain their books, and so, for example, Calumet would write their checks for them. You know, if they, for example, would want one of their members to be a signatory on the check, I mean, that would have to be approved by the council. You know, because I understand, especially, you know, for their funds, because they do have that fish boil every summer. I mean,
and their own fundraiser.
right, yeah. I mean, you know, but and that's why one of the things is, and perhaps we should have Jackie here as well, is to understand what happens if they have their own fundraiser. Must those funds be turned over to the village, or are those funds, you know, are they
controlled
right?
by
Do
them?
they keep them? Yeah. And I'll be honest, that's something I don't know. So you know, when we set our next meeting, it probably would be good to have both Tim and Jackie present for the meeting, so that we can get this resolved. I mean, like I said, this has been in there for years, and how it started, I don't know, but you know, again, I think it's time to
Change it.
Yeah, to change it and do it correctly. I mean, it's, you know, do I think there's much exposure? No. Do I think there's, you know, a chance of, you know, theft? It's pretty remote. I mean, they have good controls too, but I think the reality is we need, you know, we need to take control of that.
Because if I'm not mistaken, and this used to be, it's been a long time since, if there was a bill, if they needed, say, new fire hose, they would give us the bill.
And there are things that we do pay for still.
Okay.
When the fire hydrants froze on Pine Street, 2-3 winters ago, they had to buy additional hose in order to have coverage, and I believe we split the cost with them for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are things that we still purchase on their behalf through general funds. So, yeah.
Your budget.
Yeah, so that is in there. Let's see, the other thing that I would like to talk about too are wages for village employees, and Sandy, I mean, you can talk about this, is that personnel as well. Greg, who is our janitor, and Corrine, who of course is our administrative assistant, they have not had raises since August of 2014. Greg is currently making $8.40 an hour, which is not all that much. And you know, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what Corey is making. Greg works for us 12 hours a week, and it does, you know, janitorial services on behalf of the village. You know, vacuuming, making sure restrooms are clean, during the winter months, shoveling. So again, yeah, he has not had anything since, and, outgoing. Corinne works a total of 35 hours a week. And again, she has been here for many, many years.
Did we just vote to give her a raise?
No, we did
At
not.
the last meeting?
No. I think Sandy, your suggestion is that it go to committee first, and so.
That we can, personally, I was thinking, let's look at the budget, what our budget's gonna be, and then we can go back and look at that
Yeah.
down the road a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest, 50 cents an hour isn't that all that much. I mean, if we were doing dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's probably just over $1,000 for the two of them. I can do the calculation real quick if you like, but it's not a significant sum of money. And I think for 2.5 years, I mean, I do think that that's appropriate, so.
Yeah, we'll have to do another personnel.
Right.
So I can bring it up at that
Right,
time.
yeah, so I would like to do 50 cents for both of them, and I would like to make that retroactive to January 1st. I think that's, again, I think both of them do a good job on behalf of the village, and, it's 2.5 years without, any change in salary is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, expenses don't go down.
Yeah.
The other one that I want to talk about is Rob Remlo. He works in our street department, and he is the person, he had been working at Kissel, did not want to go to Houghton when Kissel moved down there. He, he talked to Steve, and he was hired with the idea that he would be Steve's replacement. And Steve, I know, he's been here, I believe, a year, probably more. Steve is pleased with his performance, but right now he is not considered a full-time employee of the village, therefore he does not get any vacation time. And the way his overtime is computed is different than a full-time employee. And so, for example, in January, and I have to ask Corinne what it is. You can compute overtime based on an 8-hour day, or you can compute overtime based on a 40-hour week. And I know in January that, based on the one method, he would have had 13 hours of overtime, but because he's considered a part-time employee, he only got paid for 9 hours of overtime. And that, again, that doesn't, he is working as hard as Steve works. So again, I would like to have Rob made a full-time employee of the village. Again, I don't know how long Steve will remain, as head of the street department, but I think this is somebody that we would like to keep, keep as part of the village as an employee. I mean, Steve is not getting younger, and he has. Well, that's it. That's the other.
He's a certified
other.
mechanic, so that will save us money.
Right. So, yeah, well, and that's it. He, like Steve, can repair equipment rather than us having to send it out for repair. So, I think this is somebody that we would like to keep. And again, I would like to see that go back to January 1st, retroactive to January 1st. Let's see. Is there anything? Well, and longer term, he has indicated that he has an interest in getting health insurance. No surprise. Steve has it right now. Steve's health insurance, and there's two of them, runs us about $25,000 a year. But we also have an extremely good plan. Steve currently is the only employee who is receiving health insurance. So I think, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. I think what we need to consider is, let's see, the guy who provides us with health insurance is, I think his first name. Anyways, I think we need to contact him. Chuck Bailey, that's it. That's who.
What did he, what company is the health insurance through at the moment? Chuck is like a agent.
Right.
So.
I want to say Michigan Blue Cross
Blue
Blue
Cross
Shield,
Blue
but we can check with Corey.
Because I know they used to have Blue Cross many years ago.
Yeah, I think we still do. I know we've looked at changing it, to see if we could find somebody who was less expensive, but, I think both health insurers are pretty, and Corey could give you contact information. But I think realistically, again, if we want to keep him, we probably have to offer him something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, like I said, right now, our current policy is bells and whistles, and it's very generous, and we don't have to do that. He is a single individual, so I think premiums will probably be reasonable. Unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen with the Affordable Care Act, how that's going to change, and so that's one of those things. And that's why I say, this is probably a little bit further down the line, because, we have talked in the past about possibly just giving people a lump sum and saying, go on one of the insurance exchanges or state exchanges to find health insurance. But again, I don't know what those are going to look like in a few months. So, is there going to be more competition, less competition? This morning I was listening how, one of the reasons that current policies are so expensive is because, of course, the Affordable Care Act specifies, all these minimum things that you have to provide, which, not every, people may not choose to want or may not want. So, but I think that's something that we need to explore, I think we need to be careful, because whatever we do is setting precedent for other village employees. So, so I think we need to do a thorough study of, what is the best thing. And again, I'm a firm believer that everyone should have health insurance. It's just that it's so darn expensive. But again, I think in the long run, if we're going to retain Rob, and again, I think Steve thinks it's worthwhile to try to do so. I think that's something that we have to do. So
That's something we can research with Chuck.
Yeah.
Really, that there's more than just Michigan Blue Cross. That would probably save more money.
Yeah, and there are various plans. Obviously, deductibles change.
Yeah.
I think though you're going to find that it's pretty expensive regardless. So, but again, I think that's one of the, and I think as we go through the budget, we're probably going to have to make some provision in the budget for health insurance for Rob. Same thing. If we do it for Rob, then Joel will ask for whoever is in that position. The reality is that a full-time position is going to ask for it.
Okay, what happens if, I'm just trying to think, where would you put that in the budget? Same thing. Say if someone says, okay, I don't want health insurance, but he wants to be compensated because we're not paying for the insurance, would that come out of,
We have
where does it come out?
we have a line, a general ledger account called insurance. So that's where your insurance-related expenses would go.
Would come out.
Yeah, and you're going to find is the ledger, of course, is a lot more detailed than what you see it here. In fact, if you want to take a look at it, it's obviously there for you to look at, just to see what kind of accounts are in there. But I think you'll find. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to look at the ledger to see.
And again, like I said, especially as we're going through the budgets, that'll be on the table, because again, this is only the third or fourth time that I've gone through the budgets, and although most of the account descriptions on the budget are self-explanatory, there are things that I've got to look through the ledger to see what flows through there, because there are some that the descriptions are again, when you only really look at it once a year, it's kind of tough. And then, let's see, the only other thing too is, of course, one of the last things you'll find that we do when we do the budget is to look at major and local street funds, simply because we don't know what we're going to spend. through the end of February. That's where, all the snow removal goes into. I can assure you, we have never had sufficient taxes raised to cover all the expenses associated with snow removal. And there's three major things that come in there. You get property taxes go into major local street funds. You get Act 51 money, which is a state program, and the state program, those funds are meant for road maintenance, and so most communities with less snowfall can use those funds for filling potholes, repaving streets, etc. Here we use almost 100% of it for snow removal. Obviously we do have potholes to fill and things like that, but just the nature of our winters is such that most of that money goes to that. And then the other thing that we get is something called extra snowfall money. And extra snowfall money is set up for communities that receive more than 50 inches of snow in the course of the year. And there's a pool of money that the state sets aside for that, and then they divvy it up amongst the communities, and there's always a one-year lag. So for example, the funds, and we'll receive them usually in March. So though they're due to us as of February 28th. So because of last year's relatively low snowfall, there's a good chance that we'll probably only receive maybe around 40 to 45,000. Versus what was the year we had 320 inches of snow. The following year we received over $60,000. So the only one I know who is really familiar with that whole computation is Ed Burton. He's pretty good at estimating it, but you can also call the state, like February 27th, and they'll generally be able to tell you what that number is, or very close to when we have the public meeting, so that the budget can be adjusted, to reflect what we're really going to get. As we're drafting it, as we're putting proposals together, we'll put in an estimated number based on a comparable year, but extra snowfall money is kind of a crapshoot, to be honest. What I've always been told is that what you want is 220 inches of snow up here, no snow below the Mackin operation. That kind of maximizes our payout from the state. So that's one of the peculiarities of that too. And then I know sanitation is looking at it. If you look in there, if you look at our sanitation fund, you'll see that between property taxes and the fees charged for trash collection, we do not raise sufficient funds to cover expenses. And so I think that's, going to have to change in the coming fiscal year. That we are simply going to have to charge more. I have not looked at the sanitation ordinance specifically. Someone told me, and I don't know if this is true, that $12 is in the ordinance. Sydney, do you know that?
There's a resolution to the ordinance. I think the ordinance says $10, and then there's a resolution establishing at $12.
Okay,
But as well, it requires everybody in the village, and you're not allowed to opt out as policies have been.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in the position now, because the administrator and previous administrators have been letting people opt out when
Yeah,
they're
Jim
not supposed to
Tersha
be.
had a discussion with Rob. We pulled Rob in and talked to him because you can't opt out, even if you don't use the system.
Right. So
Is how the ordinance is written.
So
Now,
even if, and I know there are a lot of people who don't pay, but and that
but
was
they
my,
should still be getting
right,
a
and that was
bill.
my
and-
understanding, is you can't opt out. Yeah.
In the beginning, certain businesses that were able to opt out because of
They
the
shouldn't.
amount of,
Yes, there's,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
just saying-
I'm sorry, go ahead and
I'm
finish.
just
I didn't mean
saying,
to interrupt. I didn't mean to
this
interrupt.
is how it started. Because with owning a business, when you do a lot of garbage, like myself, I had to have the dumpster. And
Right. So
back
again,
then, I wasn't given a choice. If you get a dumpster, you go through the sanitation, whoever we contracted with, versus now, which I found out probably not too long ago, 5 years ago, that the village has a portion there too with the dumpsters, so.
Well, at any rate, that needs to be looked at, and again, it's especially if people aren't there's gonna be a lot of businesses that aren't happy, so
No,
either.
there is businesses, heavy users, it's
Right,
defined
yes,
in the
yeah,
ordinance.
that's
There
legitimate,
is
okay, and I thought there
information
was,
that's
yeah.
different.
Right, it's just
Say that
basically,
again.
it's just not a fair ordinance to the people like me. Hey, it's great, I pay cheaper trash than anybody else, but there's people being taxed for sanitation that pay for their own trash removal, that are basically subsidizing my trash removal. As a village, we really have no business being in the trash business. We have no trucks.
But we have to be responsible for trash.
Well, and we really shouldn't be talking, about changing
Yeah.
sanitation, that's sanitation
I
committee.
have a request. Can we have the public comment period that you agreed to have at the beginning? I'll make my
So-
comment and then I can leave.
Oh, yeah, sure, I'm sorry, yeah, I
My
realized that
comments.
after I started, I'm like,
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few things, I'll just go through my list so you guys can hear them and then discuss them as you find fit. Number one, I have Jackie's audit letter from July, and in addition to what Dave mentioned about the Fireman's Fund, there's this number 2 point says, during the current fiscal year, expenditures exceeded appropriations in the general fund and sanitation funds by $40,000 and $1,000 respectively. I recommend that the village council monitor actual and budgeted expenditures to ensure compliance with state law. So I just wanted to
yeah, no, I'm aware of that, sorry, I
bring
didn't
that
think
up.
of that, yeah.
And then that relates to, because one of those, the $1,000, is the sanitation fund. I was working really intensely on the sanitation fund and doing lots of figures, and I really was getting to the point where, yes, we need to increase the $12 fee, but not by much. I mean, I had a system in there that if we could negotiate what Houghton has, and we have actually enforce our ordinance in the way that it was intended to be enforced, it would be $12.65 a month. So it's not disastrous or anything that would scare our community. But then don't forget that there are 2 aspects going on with sanitation, that fund. What I was researching and coming to understand was that the number of hours that the street department is billing for picking up trash has increased. So it may not just be the garbage side of it. It may be the village going around and cleaning up the streets. So, we've got our spring and fall cleanup, and I can see on the last report from Steve, he did the fall cleanup and trash pickup, which amounted to 80 hours. And, but he's doing it, he's being a good guy and trying to do a good job. And he's going around and cleaning up, and it's not just the twice a year, spring and fall. June he did 26 hours, and July I think is 26 hours as well. So I think the village hired Steve, and he's doing a phenomenal job, but it may be where it's surpassing what the village can afford. Or maybe you need to look at, is all of his time dealing with cleaning the street coming from sanitation, or should some come from street funds? And if you look at that, our deficit in the sanitation fund is not that bad, $5,000. If you tweaked how much you're taking out of, you have to look at it from the 2 sides. What is the garbage aspect and what is the cleaning up the village aspect? And where do you want to balance? You want to have the garbage, deal with garbage, and do you want to have reevaluate maybe the street department hours and the effort that's going into there? Because maybe we just can't afford that phenomenal job that Steve is doing. Or you need to figure out how to afford it. Okay. So then the other thing is water fund. I was on the finance committee, and something I really worked hard on was making sure that our water fund isn't always zero.
And this is,
wait,
and this is
I'd
for you
like
don't
to-
know, it's rental. It's Michigan American Water basically renting our pipes, correct?
Mhm. So we get 10% of what the customers are billed, the gross revenues that the water company collects. The village gets 10% for their use of our pipes. And so my observation was, well, maybe that 10% is enough to cover expenditures. But what was happening was it was going into the general fund and getting lost and not being designated as water. So on the finance committee, I was a proponent of, and we approved with the council's budget, to set aside, it amounts to $17,200, that's what it was from prior years, to be put into the water fund. And I've been waiting 11 months, waiting for it to show up. And it hasn't shown up. And so I wanted to check on that. I recall, after waiting 6 months or something, Rob said, well, we don't get the check from the water fund until January. So I'm just kind of checking in now saying, are we getting that check? Is it going into the water fund as the council agreed?
Right.
I think, we might discover that it's getting used to deal with snow, but I think it's only fair to the residents when they pay their water bill that water money goes to the water fund. And if the council has to decide to essentially take money out of the water fund and use it elsewhere, I think that should be a transparent, open thing instead of it getting lost in the general fund and we're not aware that we're essentially spending water money on snow removal or whatever. So that was an issue that's important to me. And then the last thing is, I think the finance committee should really take a look at what the village can afford for the administrator position or the clerk staff position. I feel that with the personnel committee, they're more taking an approach of, well, we would like to offer, for example, 3 weeks vacation. But I'd like the finance committee to say, can we afford to offer 3 weeks vacation? Really figure out how much you can afford for the administrator. What is your budget? And then reevaluate the contract to see if that, everybody wants to be nice, I think is the thing. We'd love to give people we'd love to give them health insurance. We'd love to give them weeks and weeks of time off. We'd love to give them a retirement package. But I really would like the finance committee to say, what money do we have to work with? I mean, I've heard numbers from 30 to 40,000 as a salary, but really say, we can afford 50, period. How are we going to do this? And some of it is going to be health insurance money, or some of it's going to be time off, because a week off costs money to get somebody a week off. So I just wanted to double check and see that the finance committee reviews the terms of the contract to make sure that the village can afford something and we don't get into a situation that we're finding after the fact we're in trouble about. And that's all. Thank you.
Good night. I have one thing to say. Last year in October, the village council approved $10,000 out of the general fund for a DDA project. Dave, you're on the DDA committee. It was told that the DDA, maybe it's just a rumor, I talked to, I don't remember his name, but talked to another member of the DDA. Is that money coming back? I mean, that's a lot of potholes.
And I think you're talking about $20,000.
Is it 20 now?
This is for the building stabilization?
Building stabilization, so 20,000 is coming out of the general fund?
No, it will come out of the DDA.
The whole 20,000?
No.
The village has committed 10,000.
The village, right, but at that time, and even now, the village can't afford to spend $10,000 when we don't have enough money to do our streets, we don't have enough money to repair our streets, our sanitation fund is a mess. Basically, we don't have the funds to take care of the DDA's projects. I was assured by one member of the DDA minutes before the meeting that they were not asking the village for a thing because they were aware that the village was broke. And then I was surprised, not only that they were asking, but it went from $5,000 at the committee meeting to $10,000 at the meeting. Now, these were two lame butt duck council members that probably just did not care. I mean, all their interests are within the DDA. You know, the DDA should be taking care of their own garbage. Our sanitation fund, if we weren't billing residents to pick up trash within the DDA, that would recover tons of money to put back in the sanitation fund for residents. So that if the business are going to pay for their own trash, then they need to pay for all their own trash. It shouldn't come out of the sanitation fund. You know, but Dave, have you the word, you'll bring that up to the DDA to bring that money back to the general fund?
Well, first of all, remember, okay, which are you talking about? The $20,000 is coming from the tax increment finance district.
Right.
Which
Now,
is,
the
those
10,000
are DDA funds.
The 10,000.
Now, the 10,000, I mean, if the council voted, you know, to rescind that pledge, then, you know, obviously it doesn't
But
have to.
In the past, the DDA has brought money back, and as a member of the DDA,
Right.
the DDA could do the same.
Right.
You know, that was the guise under which this was pulled through. I mean, I was sitting there, it's like, yeah, the DDA can bring that money back. But $10,000 out of our general fund, that is a lot of potholes. That's a lot of weeks vacation. That's a lot of money. I mean, we formed the DDA to take care of that district. We forfeited TAC funds back to them from the township, the county, the state, and from us for them to take care of it. You know, why are we spending village resident money for DDA projects? It makes no sense.
Well,
Because that money that they captured.
No, not the captured money.
no,
Not
no,
the
it's not
captured
about
money.
This is in
10,000
addition,
from the village.
Sandy.
Well, and again, I think that's, you know, that pledge passed, I believe, 6-0. I think that was
No, I
unanimous.
was definitely against it.
I think you
Was
voted
it-
in
I was
favor of it.
voted-
You were against it, but
I
I
was
think you
for
voted in favor.
5,000, I voted against 10.
Okay, I would have to go back, okay, but it was still,
Was it
that
the
5 votes
October
to
meeting
1.
are you guys talking about?
Right.
Right. So again.
Well, the DDA, you know what, I'll just reserve my comment for the next meeting. I appreciate it, you know, but that's something that the finance company should look into because we clearly cannot afford to do the DDA's job with resident money.
Those are everything that I wanted to cover. How about you guys? Do you get questions? I mean, you know, you probably want to look at all this and again, you know, yeah, there's a lot in there. The footnotes are in there.
What's, we have a lease with American Water Works.
Yes.
Can we see a copy of that lease?
Cindy,
You're about to leave too, right?
Cindy, when is the lease with Michigan American Water? When does that contract end? It's pretty soon, right? 2, 3 years, 4 years now? Yeah, so
A
that,
handful
And
of
then
years.
who's responsible to maintain the pipes?
The village.
Okay,
And that's what we get, it's approximately 17,000 a year.
so we have kind of like a gross lease with them.
We really went into the fine details of that lease. We spent a whole year on it. And it's not, the lease is very, very old. It's older than me. Or maybe, no, it is my
I think
age, or
it's
something
the
like that.
80s.
It's like on the same year. And we had so many revisions and things that we could do, but the outcome was after a year of looking at it, 10% of gross income is probably the best we could get. And Jim Tersha advised us that not to open the can of worms because in negotiating with such an enormous monopoly,
that's what it is.
we will get worse. So we created a cover letter that we gave to Rob, and I hope is on record to put on top of that lease with instructions to the future council that will be around at that time of what our suggestions were that we came up with. Because I think what would happen is if you open the lease up to discussion with the water company, we'll get something worse than what we have. And it's actually even advisable, our committee decided, to let it expire and hope the company never notices. So that's in there. So be careful, and there is a cover letter with information of the things that we found out about who owns what and where things start, and it's kind of detailed. And you can also look back at the sanitation committee's minutes.
Are they a Georgia company or North Carolina company? Isn't it somewhere in the southeast, the corporate office?
Yeah.
They're publicly traded.
Are they?
Yeah.
So actually, this is a good point to point out. There's lots of discussion with sanitation. Let's let the private sector just take over. I think that water companies example, when the village gets away from providing the public service and goes to the private sector, you lose that stake you have in negotiating power. So the only negotiating power we have left with the water company is the fact that we own those rights. And I think the village should always have some stake in the game. You'll find Peggy will say, let's just get out of the business. But I like having, at least, our village is small, but at least we're a few hundred people going up against the water company instead of an individual. So think about that in terms of sanitation. There's a movement to eliminate the village being involved with sanitation. If you back out of sanitation, who knows which private company? Will there be good competition in working in the marketplace, or will Waste Management come as the big company and just have the best deal and the best package and have all the other competitors just out of the market, and you get that monopoly and the village isn't there? I feel the village has a hand at stake when you're dealing with the billing. There was talk of, it's inconvenient, we don't want to be the people dealing with the billing, let's just let Waste Management have it all. But being in the billing part means that you have a stake in the game. And I really think that's important for us to be the village and stand up for the people.
Well, where are we with the lease with the theater?
I asked Art about it last week. I have not heard anything. It's still in a draft stage. So
Is that a net lease or they need?
it's like it's $1 a year. It's essentially $1 a year.
For what's $1?
To rent the theater.
Per square foot?
No.
They pay $1 per year.
Right, because again, basic contract, you have to have some consideration, and so in the past it's always been $1. Now, having said that, I will also add that the theater voluntarily shoulders a big financial burden. So, for example, when the roof was replaced over the proscenium and the stage area, we received a 50-50 match grant for that, and the theater paid. They represented the village's 50%. The furnace in the theater went, and the theater paid the $20,000 to replace the furnace in the theater. So again, although
That's in the lease, or they?
no, this is volunteer on their part, and because they recognize the village just can't afford to do it. I hate to say it, but I mean that roof above the proscenium and stage. I don't remember how much it was, but yeah, I mean, to Nate's point, I mean, we just can't afford to do that, and yet you also can't launch the theater. So the theater is the same thing with the elevator. I mean, that is what, a $300,000 project, and that is solely up to them to fund, although again, it is, village-owned property.
If we sign a 30-year lease with them, and they're not responsible for maintenance, even though they've been helping out, what happens if they decide not to help out?
Well, at that point, the village would have to say, do we have the money to do it? And if the answer is no, then whatever is needed just simply wouldn't get done.
Then are we liable to them?
No, not right now, no.
I mean, if they can't
Oh,
operate
if you mean,
anymore.
oh yeah, if you're, it's been a while, last time I looked at the lease was when we renewed it, so that's something, yeah, you probably want to get a copy of, well, be interesting to see what the new lease looks like, and I keep asking, and I don't know why it's taking so long to draft.
I mean, can we make them responsible for, can we make it like a triple net lease, or?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
it's,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, and again, once we see it, I mean, we'll know, I mean, up till now, though the lease has been, we've assumed responsibility for maintaining the building, but the reality is they've done it, I mean, it's,
And we pay our insurance,
right,
are there taxes?
No.
Okay.
yeah, it's I mean, Calumet Theater is a not-for-profit, and, as a village, we do not pay any sort of taxes.
Okay.
So again, I mean, after this is, I don't know if there's anybody in the theater today, I don't know if there's anybody around on Mondays, I think they're only here Wednesdays through Saturdays. But again, I can ask, what's the state of that lease, because I haven't seen it, and I don't understand why it's taking them so long.
I mean, if we're giving them essentially a free lease term, I'd like to see it to where they're responsible for the maintenance on the building. I don't know, could they reimburse us annually for our insurance on the building? I mean, could they make it so? And then if, like you said, if the roof caves in, if we can't afford to fix it, if they don't want to, then I'll be liable to them.
Yeah, because of their inability to use it.
Fair enough.
And again, I'd have to read
Okay.
the lease.
I'm gonna start researching. I'm going to start looking into the financial aspect of the water. I'm gonna do some research there.
Yeah.
Not gonna move on anything, just gonna do some research. What if they were, we still own our pipes, but they're responsible for maintaining them?
Right, yeah. And again, to Sydney's point, we don't have a lot of leverage with them. Number one, they are the only water supplier, obviously. I don't know, again, I don't know what would happen if.
I'm not going to approach them. I'm
Right,
just-
right, no, yeah, it's worth looking at. I don't know the answer. I just don't know the answer.
All right. I'd like to see that lease. I mean, that's another question, is if there's repairs for the pipes that we can't afford to do, I don't know, then what happens?
Well, and again, I think as Sydney points out, this 17,000, it's gone into the general fund, and then again, with this, with the spirit of transparency, to put it out separately, we may end up using those funds for, street repairs. There's no prohibition against it. When we replaced the water lines on Pine Street, when the fire hydrants, when the lines froze there, I think it was 26.6 that came out of the general fund. That did not come out of, at that time, the water fund was buried within the general fund. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but, to Sydney's point, just from a transparency perspective, it's good to say, every year we're getting $17,000 from the water company, and should a line collapse or freeze, those funds should be there
Should be
to
built
restore
up.
the line. Yes.
It'd be interesting to see
Deferred maintenance fund.
what type of lease, say, Lorraine has, Copper City, what do they, because it's all the same one.
Well, I want to look all over the country, and I want to look at all the different water companies, and, I think there's always leverage in negotiating or renegotiating the lease.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't want to say all, I guess you can't say all
And that may be one where too, where Village of Lorraine and Village of Calumet and Village of Copper City as well as the township somehow combine and become one bargaining unit.
You know,
Same thing would apply with the sanitation.
Yeah, we need to look into that as well, we'll look into that as well.
yeah. I can look at that too, because isn't, like with the sanitation, invoices aren't matching up with their subs.
Right.
That's what I heard, so
Right. That
somehow
they
we
were-
have to get
right. They were billing
Yes.
us, right, they were billing us for more,
than what
right,
actually,
right, than we were billing for. So yeah, there was a big discrepancy
I mean,
between those
and
two
that would-
numbers.
that would change our fund a lot if those people who weren't,
Should be,
Should be,
yeah. If there are people being
yeah,
billed, and
not.
that's Nate's point, if there are people who
Yeah.
should be being billed,
they should be,
yes.
Well, if
yes.
we bill someone and they don't pay, what happens?
goes on their tax rolls, not
Right,
that.
but, yes, but Kathy Beatty has already said she would never foreclose for that alone.
Correct.
Right.
But
So,
if
but
they
if they
sold their
sell the
building,
property,
they have to
then,
come
right,
up
they would
to
have
date.
to, right.
So then what position are we in? Well, if they get foreclosed on, what position are we in to collect that tax revenue? Last?
Yeah, probably. Right now, when it comes to property taxes alone, the county gives us 100% of what we're entitled to, whether or not they actually collect it. And it's my understanding that they have a fund set aside to make up those deficits, because clearly there are people who don't pay their property taxes. And so far, they have given us 100% of what we are entitled to. But in theory, if they didn't have these reserve funds, they could come back to us and have us reimburse them for whatever they didn't collect. Now,
Who?
Hope County could. Hope
We have to
County, yes.
reimburse Hope
Hope
County.
County for property taxes that they were unable to collect, so whatever their bad debts were here in Calumet within the village, they could force, it's never happened, but they could force us to reimburse us for those funds. What happens, the garbage fees are strictly a village thing, so yeah, I mean, we don't get any, those funds are whatever we collect, the county doesn't, reimburse us, or, it's not the same thing as a property tax. So all it does is, it goes on their tax bill, and, again, because, Kathy's opinion is that it's too small to foreclose on a property owner, for being delinquent. So again, yeah, the only time that you're likely to receive those fees are when they, when the person, the individual gets ready to sell the property, because there would be a lien on the property.
I learned the hard way, like when you rent places in town. You think they're paying their garbage bill, but when they move out, and then you find out they haven't paid their garbage bill, you're responsible for it. So you learn as a renter, you make sure that's it, you collect that on their rent. And the least, I know I learned the hard way, where that bill came back to me, or it would have been put on my taxes.
I would make a comment that might be helpful with the sanitation. Okay. With the way the sanitation's been run, and with the liens that are out there, and there are liens on property that the county won't enforce. Those liens got there because some people got bills and other people didn't. Some people were able to opt out, even though by ordinance they weren't allowed to opt out. So right now, we have liens against some people, and we have not put liens against others. So it's not fair to say you have to pay and you don't have to pay. We're going to put a lien on your house, but you're okay, we don't have to put a lien on your house. I suggested to Jim, and I'm suggesting to you, I think we should forgive those liens and start over, because the liens they're basically unfair. There's people right now that get garbage service that aren't charged for it. There's people that don't get garbage service that have liens on their property because they didn't pay the bill, and they don't get the burden service. So the whole system is unfair, and to continue those liens is unfair. To try to collect those liens when you're not collecting from other people. Everybody's entitled to equal protection under the law. And right now, for the past 4 years or so, it hasn't been the case. You know, some people are charged and some people aren't, when the ordinance says everybody should be. You know, so
That was what I heard, I'm not right, I heard everyone.
Yeah,
There is
there's
no
no,
option.
there's no opt-out. Yeah.
But then how did some people opt out?
And
It's
this
been
one,
allowed.
and this, what I was talking about is when we first started to pay, when the individuals paid for garbage or their sanitation, that you would get billed every month. When they set it up a long time ago, you're talking 20-some years ago that this has been in effect, they gave us a choice back then.
even though the ordinance said no. You know,
Apparently, I did never read the ordinance, so I couldn't tell you that. But, like I said, there's
It's
changes
just something for
that
you guys to think about.
we have to think
Well,
about.
and again, I mean, that's something that sanitation really needs to address. And again, I don't know all the details too, but I believe at least in one instance, someone did take it to court, and the courts determined that they did not have to pay it.
Because the lien, like a lien on it.
I don't know, I mean, this goes way back.
Okay.
So they don't have to pay what trash or the lien?
That, again, I'm not
According to
We
sure.
the
don't know the
ordinance right
details,
now, we have to pay. According to the ordinance right now, the way the ordinance is written right now, in effect right now, everybody should be paying. You know, there is
And it's
an
$12 a month.
amendment that would allow the businesses a little leeway, but as far as residents, part-time residents, everybody should be paying that $12 a month. And the administrator and the clerk's position is contrary to the ordinance and has cost. I mean, if you went back through the billing and determined how many people haven't paid, I mean, that's thousands of dollars. It's just gone. It's just gone. Our sanitation fund would not be in the predicament it is right now if it was run as intended. So, it's not something that's solved easily overnight. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, I personally think the best way, a good blight ordinance, making sure everybody picks up their own trash and let the free market handle it. Everybody's got to have trash service or they got to haul it off, I mean, so let the free market handle it. When we start designating one private company, then we create our own monopoly. We have no trucks. We have no trash service. Now, if what I would like to see is revenue sharing with the township and Lorien for garbage service. Lorien has run a positive balance on their sanitation for a very long time. Now, this year they are going to cut back on their spring and summer
Do
cleanup.
they do it themselves?
What's that?
Yes.
They do it themselves?
Yeah.
In the village itself. They're going to cut back on their spring and summer cleanup. But when they do a spring and summer cleanup, they do a spring and summer cleanup. I've lived here for 6 years. Never have I seen a spring and summer cleanup, ever. I've seen volunteers, I've led volunteers myself doing cleanup, but never have I seen a village run spring and summer cleanup where residents get their trash and their brush and they put it out on the street.
It's in the
I was
newspaper.
told a year ago, standing in that office, that the sanitation fund has just been used basically as a trust fund. Sue Dana, when she had administration time, would bill sanitation for that time, for administration. I mean, Rob admitted, it's a slush fund. They just take
Well,
money out.
I don't think that is true.
Well, I mean, that's what he told me.
Well, and I think that's being incautious with words,
Right.
but again, we're way off topic. I mean, these are things that sanitation needs to address, not the finance.
Well, I mean, I just thought it pertained to finance, because you're gonna put money out there for certain things. And if we take care of these things that are in the red, then we'll have money for things such as vacations and pay raises.
Right. Anything else that you guys want to cover yet?
said, get that,
Lecture.
the ledger and look at it, and that, I think that will help us to compare, and then we can, I think we need to set up another meeting
Yeah, yeah, agree.
now, so we can go over this.
Yeah, I'd like to meet often, like make sure.
Certainly through the end of February, yeah, certainly through the end of February.
Do you want to meet once a week? Do you want to meet twice a week? How do you, works in,
Well,
Your
I
schedules.
think once a week is sufficient, I mean,
okay.
especially, you know, you don't put a. you know,
So, like next Monday, we want to meet again then?
I'm gonna be out of town. I'm gonna be out of town like Wednesday.
So then that would be next Thursday. Or Friday.
Let's not do Thursday, let's do Friday.
I think that's good. Friday
I hardly ever leave town.
at 10. Is that a good time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And that's the 20.
7.
Yeah.
Friday, 10,
That's-
27. Now we can break out all the ledgers and stuff at that meeting.
Okay, I'll make sure that they're there. And in fact, I mean, it probably would be a good time, we would actually probably go through a couple of the budgets. We'd probably go through the DDA and the HDC budgets. The DDA meets the first Tuesday of the month, and, you know, after we draft a budget, we present it to them for their approval as well. So that should be available to them. I don't know what the date of the first Tuesday of the month is, but.
And their budget goes towards maintaining the buildings.
No, I mean, the DDA, there's an ordinance, you know, which describes the function of the DDA, but broadly, their purpose is to promote redevelopment within the downtown district. And so that, you know, that's taken different forms. This 20,000 that Nate is referring to was pledged for the stabilization of buildings that are threatened, and yeah, could collapse. And of course, it's premised on the idea that we would receive state funds. You know, was basically to represent the village's match. So, you know, they usually pay, for example, for the street cleaning within the district. You know, they subsidize free parking. You know, we do not, we have meters, but we do not enforce them. And in return for that, I mean, they provide us with $600 a month. Because the grader that we have is used heavily within the business district. I mean, they pay for a portion of that piece of equipment.
So we give them money and they give it back to us.
Well, okay, so there's a tax increment finance district, and so I think it usually raises about $60,000 a year. And of that, as Nate points out, a portion of that, you know, are revenues that would otherwise go directly to the village, but we also capture funds that would be going to the intermediate school district, to the county, to the township. So there's, I think of that 60 grand, I guess maybe, I don't know if it'd be like 40 would normally come back to the village, and this way we capture 20 grand that would normally go to county and township. One of the things, and again, I don't know this year what it's going to look like, but they have also, simply because snow removal in the downtown area is, you know, we're always hauling snow. They have, you know, historically always helped to subsidize that, you know, on the premise that, again, by doing so, it's promoting the downtown area. So, yeah, so those are the kinds of things that they spend money on. You know, last year they spent money on, they did, and historically they've always set aside money for what they call mini grants, and it's, you know, they're small. I think they're no more than, maximum is $2,000. It's a one-to-one match, and it's given to property owners to, you know, restore or repair their buildings. So and out the door. They've been there, but nobody's ever asked for them, so.
What's the status of the Evergreen restaurant?
So I know Jeff Ratcliffe from Calumet Economic Development has been working with someone as a potential buyer, but nothing's happened yet. And that is not a DD-owned property, right? That's still privately owned. Yeah. The DDA does have a easement on certain fixtures within the building. And so that's the only, which of course it doesn't grant them ownership, but you do have a certain element of control as to what happens with those.
Who owns that?
Is it Julie?
No, Julie doesn't have anything, the one,
It was Restello's, right?
Restello's, yes.
Yeah.
and
But
the daughter used to run it, and she
right,
passed
but she
away.
passed away. He died.
He
Charlie
just
died.
passed
And she
away
did too,
shortly.
the wife too, didn't she?
I think she's in nursing.
She or
something.
something.
But this son-in-law,
Oh, is
has
he the one who-
control
He has
over that.
control, or he
I
owns
think he
it?
owns it.
Okay. I mean, you can go to Hope County, find out who is the legal owner of the
And I can't
building.
think of his name.
I don't either.
So the DDA's not working with somebody right now to fill that space?
The DDA is not, Cuban Economic Development is.
Kita.
Yeah, CUDA is.
Under the impression.
It's not the DDA thing.
This is the first time I heard about it.
I think they had a sign on there for sale.
Of course, have I.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll give them a call.
because I don't know who owns it. Yeah, because I've heard Julie change the locks. There's so many rumors you hear, and that's why I always say, go back and find out, call Houghton County and find out who owns the building, because I don't know who has the legal title to it, or at this point, it could still be private. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be
I
a
don't-
mistake.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea who owns the building, so at this point, because I've heard so many different stories.
Yeah.
I think it might even be a neighbor of yours, I think, Tyler, I'm not sure. I talked to a woman this summer, and she said that she was moving in there, she was starting a nonprofit, and, but again, I'm not sure, I can't remember. She's last time. Wish I could help you, because I spoke with her for about a half hour, 45 minutes, because she had indicated that she was working with Lori Oppenheim and those members on the DDA. But he's on the DDA and he hasn't heard anything about it, so.
My only neighbor over there is Dawn. Dawn owns the duplex next to me. She rents it. And then
What's her
Sydney-
last name?
I don't know.
Well, maybe it's something to look into, but as far as the DDA is concerned, if you look at the ordinance establishing the DDA, it'll help you understand what their true thing is to do. And you'll also find there's only 3 years left on their chart. And so, it's been around since 1978. You walk up and down the streets, some people say, oh, it's done wonderful things. Our building's empty. In my opinion, the DDA needs a whole new makeover. It needs to work more as it's intended to work, and not the way it has in the past. But that's something for you to look at further.
Anything else?
Just something I'll mention, I don't know if it's for this committee or not. It's not anything big. Copper Dog talked about putting up they're gonna put up signposts for their signs and then leave the signs.
Oh, the brackets, yeah, I heard that.
Do we want to lease out kind of like small mini billboard space on those, put those signposts?
So like have summer banners?
I don't know, do you want to just lease them out to whoever wants to lease them within reason? I mean, just could be extra revenue for the village. I mean, within reason, we wouldn't lease to an adult bookstore or something.
Yeah, no, I think it's something to consider, and I think what I've always seen is things like, welcome to Calumet, sponsored by, it's, yeah, yeah, I don't know that we want them necessarily as just pure advertisements, but,
Something to think about.
you know, I think too, that's probably something that HDC should talk about too. I mean, I certainly don't have I know when they approached the village initially, we said, number one, you really can't do it on the concrete posts because unless you have special brackets, you'll chip the concrete. So that's, you know, so then I think they talked about doing 6th Street. So I don't know if they've ever decided that they're going to do it or not. So, but yeah, no, I think the appropriate thing to do though is to have some sort of attractive poster with the business featured on that. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly we could ask for more than the cost of the banner. Simply because there's a cost, you know, I assume our street department will end up installing it, so there's a cost associated with that, so, yeah. And it's free it's advertising for them, so, yeah. No, I think that's
But would we be, I think it's a great idea, we wouldn't own those brackets, Coppertop would?
No, we would, they're gonna give them to us.
They're gonna give them to us.
And they decided for sure to do that, I know it was still a discussion.
That was just what they mentioned in that one meeting.
Okay, yeah, see, I don't know
Okay.
I don't know.
So
what
the village
status
would
is
own
on
those brackets, okay.
That's how I took it.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, that was what they indicated, yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
All right, I look forward to meeting again, we have a lot to go over.
Friday the 27th at 10.
Right, all right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Did you have anything else?
Oh, no, you ought to do that. I appreciate you guys listening to what I have to say. I have no intention of being combative with anybody, you know. I just would like everybody to have a voice, you know, and I'd like to work with you guys. I don't want to work against you.